Hi, I am Tony Russo, and this usually is In Case You Missed It by Kates-Boylston, but we've got something a little different this week. As we begin to wind down the year and wind up for the next one, I sat down with our editor, Tom Nondorf. He runs American Cemetery and Cremation, and we just talked about some of the stories we wrote this year, some of the stories he wrote, some of the stories I wrote, some of the stories other people wrote, and we talked about what they said about 2025, or at least what they indicated to us at the time. So it's something that I think you'll really get a kick out of. And this week and next week, that is how we'll be doing the In Case You Missed It. And we're going to just get right into it right after these words from our friends and sponsors at Homesteaders.
In a business built on trust, consistent financial strength speaks volumes. That's why I'm proud to share that AM Best has once again affirmed Homesteaders' financial strength with an A- excellent rating. Last year was a transformative one for our company, and AM Best affirmation tells us we're on the right track. As a mutual company owned by our policy owners, we remain laser focused on delivering dependable value, industry-leading support, and future-ready solutions to funeral professionals nationwide. Homesteaders is stronger than ever by every measure. Our partners rely on us for the long term, and it is critical that we execute at a high level today while aggressively planning for the future. Reach out to your Homesteaders account executive to hear more about how we are leading the profession in investing in tools and services that benefit funeral providers.
So it is that time of year again. We are going to do our year in review, and joining me is the editor of American Cemetery and Cremation, Tom Nondorf. Welcome, Tom.
Tony, it's me, Tom.
I haven't talked to you since I hit record like 35 seconds ago.
Yes. Luckily, the folks out there don't know what we were talking about before, which was, what are we going to talk about?
Well, we actually have a pretty good plan for today because is this your first full year? I guess this counts as your first full year, right?
No, second full year, man.
Wow.
I've done it. It's hard to believe, right? But
time flies when you're having fun.
Full years, yeah. I just was doing a year in review myself, and I grabbed a pile of the magazines from 2024. I have a stack next to me of everything I've worked on since I came to Kates-Boylston. I had a stack of American Cemetery and Cremations for 2024, and then I had my 2025 one. And the 2025 one was like a good inch taller. I said, all right, I must be doing something okay. Magazines are getting a little thicker. That's a good sign in print world.
Yeah. And not only that, I think that the magazine has been markedly improved under your stewardship. I think lots of great things. It's a pleasure to read from month to month, and your contributors are always interesting, and your story angles are always lots of fun. Oh, and I thought of some breaking news that I'm going to drop on you just now. A story idea for me and for you, and something that I think might be important for 2026, but we'll leave that till later.
First, let me just address the kind words you said there. I like to think that American Cemetery and Cremation is getting better. I can't modestly say so myself, but I do feel good about it. And I feel that a lot of it is because the word you said, contributors. We have a couple contributors that I'm always excited to see what they send in, because like Tui Snyder, I talked to her recently on a podcast, and she's written books, but she's currently out in Italy or somewhere on the ocean. She'll write me from the ocean, and she's like, oh, I'm going. She just goes from cemetery to cemetery. But she's been a great pleasure to have her content. Another Tony Paglia in Pennsylvania. He's always going on road trips with his family and convincing them to go out to cemeteries. He went to the site of the first cremation, so we'll have that coming up soon. But anyway, I have to put it in those terms. I really like the contributors we've had, and I think that's been a big part of what people are enjoying when I hear that good feedback.
You mentioned first cremation, so I'm going to let that derail us a little bit, because 2026 is the sesquicentennial of modern cremation. And we just did a story on, well, not on Cana, on Bree Bingham, but who kind of runs the marketing, not marketing, content management for Cana, and you're going to be doing lots of stuff. Do you have anything? Sorry to put you on the spot. Lined up particularly for next year? What are you looking at next year as far as the 150th anniversary of modern cremation?
Yeah, I hope to be talking to folks like Barbara Kemes at Cana and Bree Bingham. You mentioned you just did a nice interview with her, and just covering that a great deal. And it starts with this piece coming up in February that Tony went to the site when we're talking about the sesquicentennial. It's 250 years from that first modern cremation, which happened at a place out in, I was going to say Pennsylvania, but was it Ohio?
Yeah. Unless you live in Pennsylvania or Ohio, it probably doesn't matter.
I think in Pennsylvania, but so he went there, and that's exactly where it began. Obviously, cremation is something that existed. People got burned, but the first of what we think of now as cremation and it was rather controversial in its time, but that's where we kind of trace it back to. So yeah, we hope to have a lot of interesting content covering that over 2026.
And it does remain controversial. I'm working on a story now. I don't think I squeezed it into the most recent Funeral Service Insider, but I know that I'm going to be doing a larger story on it in 2026. There was a funeral home that burned down in Seattle, and they can't replace it. They can replace it as long as they can have a crematory, but Seattle has banned crematories, so they don't know if they'll be able to have a new crematory installed there, which is going
You
to be a
cover
problem.
often in your pages of Funeral Service Insider, the NIMBY crowd, right? There's people who will fight when they hear that a crematory is being built, even though it's out by the airport or something in an industrial park. People will still fight it, and it's pretty sad, especially because it's not like something people don't need or want. People clearly desire this, so why are they suggesting that there can't actually be crematories? But what you're talking about here it's so outrageous. This place was burned down by an arsonist who was burning down a bunch of places in Seattle.
Yeah.
And if ever there was a case where you grandfather somebody in and say, rebuild, let your insurance pay and rebuild what you had before, and even make it safer, make it less toxic or whatever, if that's your thing. But to not be allowed to build it, to me, that would be a travesty.
Well, and the thing that, and this was Russ Weeks was the funeral director and the owner, and he's got a bunch. I mean, nobody's gonna. He's got 8 funeral homes in the region, in the area there. So it's not like he's just going to go begging or anything after this. But something that he mentioned during his interview that I have never considered sufficiently. He's like, we have a huge Asian population out here, and that is how they, that is how they do it. It's a religious preference, and it made me think that if Christians preferred, if the preferred Christian disposition were cremation, I wonder how different all of this would look. But there are lots of world religions that kind of demand, just like some demand that you don't get cremated, some demand that you do.
I was surprised. You had something in a recent publication, and it was something in a Catholic journal about where a Catholic minister was kind of railing against cremation in a way that seemed really old school to me, and it dawned on me like, oh, it's not sunken in with everybody that we're not going back.
Right. Well, I mean, it was very hard when, I think it may have been until the 1980s, Catholics weren't supposed to be cremated at all. That was one of the things like divorce that eventually the church kind of threw its hands up on. But more important, where I agreed with the priest, insofar as I do agree with him, is, you can't just stack all your relatives up in pile of, pile of black boxes. My father is in a black box in my mother's closet. But she intends to join him, in her own time. And then we'll remove them both from the closet and put them someplace that's not the closet and not the mantle, because the disposition, making sure that these human remains get put someplace where they can be remembered, even if it's even if it's a GPS marker or a tree that is kind of made from them. Any of the ways that you do it that is not sticking it on the mantelpiece, because people have to deal with those mantle pieces. And, there are stories every now and again, somebody, an urn will just show up at a funeral home and it'll be like somebody just like, well, I can't keep it anymore. Like a lost puppy or something. They're like, well, somebody's got to be in charge of it. And they just give them back to the funeral home,
Yeah, I
quiet.
agree with you completely on that. I mean, it's a huge part of what we're trying to inform people on their options, that, there's also the stories of people who move into a new house and then they find urns up in an attic, that
Right.
somebody just left there. So, who's that? And who were those people? And who's mourning them or knows their history or anything like that? I mean, that's what putting them on the mantle gets you. Eventually, what's on the mantle is just a decoration, and it might get put away with other decorations. I don't know. In that respect, the priest was correct, but he also went on to say stuff like, scattering ashes is not,
Undignified, he said. That was tough.
undignified. And I was like, well, that's part of the puzzle, people finding, green locations if they're into that and stuff, I think needs to probably be more accepting of that in the modern world.
Yeah, that's what, and the little joke that I wrote in my story after it was, they've never been a more flies with honey kind of institution. So, I mean, these are strongly held beliefs. I mean, I know a lot of Catholic people, and they're genuine and strongly held beliefs. So, I can appreciate that they have them, and we can probably leave it there.
Without
But,
a doubt. And listen, the fact is, a lot of what cemeteries are thriving because of beliefs like that. So
right.
I'm certainly not challenging anybody's belief system, but just in terms of how you meet the moment with
Yeah.
what the reality is, and how you sway people. I don't think you're going to sway people back to full casket burial if they're not there. If your argument is what he was saying.
Yeah. It was a little brusque. But in happier news, I want to make sure we get this up front before we talk about too many other things. You have your own podcast. So what about that? You've got a video podcast. You one-upped me.
It's not a podcast. We don't call it. We don't use the P word.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. I don't. Again, I like to call it a show. There's an old comedy sketch. I think I said to you. It's not that old, but it's internet years. It's old. 3-4 years old, and it's these 4 dudes, and everything they hear, they're like, this could be a podcast. There's so many podcasts out there, right?
Yeah.
And you want them to be awesome. You want them to be something fresh. So, it's sort of like, oh, this could be a podcast. What I wanted to do was, we don't have a lot that's just cemetery specific stuff, and take on a cemetery issue. Ashlyn Goodman is with Security National. She's out at cemeteries all the time, meeting people, talking about their needs and helping them figure stuff out. And I thought it'd be great to partner with her for something with Kates-Boylston. That's American Cemetery Live. So we're just kind of rolling it out. It's a quickie. It's like 10 minutes. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to deal with a particular issue or something. And we hope, it gets more interactive as it goes. Interactivity, in this case, just means you hear somebody give you any kind of feedback. And I'm really pleased with it. And Ashlyn Goodman, she's someone to watch because she's out there on the front lines meeting cemetery people every day, from a sales standpoint, helping people out from their sales side of things and improving staff work out there. So I'm just really excited to see the kind of stuff that she can bring to it.
Yeah, and she's a not bad writer either. She's written a couple columns, and they're always engaging.
It's true. I've got 2 great Ashlyns who I met
Oh,
this year, and I
did I
met
get the
them.
Ashland wrong?
No, not at all.
Oh, all right.
What I'm saying is Ashlyn Goodman has written for us, and Ashlyn Rickard Werner, who works for Plotbox, but she
Right.
has run cemeteries in Rhode Island. She's also someone who, and her big thing is events at cemeteries, and she's studying that. So, and I met them both at the same time, or one introduced me to the other, saying, "Hey, I'm Ashlyn, but there's another Ashlyn who's cool too that you need to talk to." And they've been great contributors for the magazine and beyond. So, it's one of those things. I'm an old guy. I'm another old guy going, this could be a podcast, right? But what I like is to have some young voices too, and people who care about cemeteries specifically, who know about cemeteries and care about them, because, us old folks can't be the only voices out there, right?
Exactly. And not only that, but we want to welcome younger people in a way that makes sense. Along those lines, you had the big women's it wasn't a podcast, it was like a roundtable. Women in cemeteries. Would you like to talk about that? I thought that was a very cool event.
It was a cool event. That came again from me saying, you do your podcast, and obviously I love it, and you have had cemetery themed stuff on there from time to time, but kind of the bulk of what we do is more directed towards funeral directors
Mhm.
and that sort of thing. And the reason for that is there's just a lot more of them, and it's just a lot more of kind of who we serve overall with American Funeral Director magazine. American Cemetery is a little bit the kid brother, if you will. So we're not in competition. But if I'm a cemetery person, sometimes I'm like, hey, what's
Yeah.
something that speaks more directly to me? And I thought, how can we get some content? And I just realized, hey, a few of the people I've been talking to lately are women in high up positions at cemeteries. I don't know if I can call it a trend or what, but it's an interesting thing because there are also simultaneously all these women's groups showing up.
Right.
Uh, Lisa Bowie, who wrote Wake Up Calls, she's a former funeral director and also ran a cemetery. Um, you hear more about her funeral director side, but the fact that she ran a cemetery, I said, how would you like to talk to someone else who runs a cemetery, some other people who work with cemeteries, and let's talk about cemetery specific stuff for women too, and see what's out there, And it was a great talk, it was a great time to learn, because you learn sort of, you talked about 1970 or whatever, old attitudes
Right.
in cemetery and funeral director world are renowned, What was
Mhm.
that like? What was it like for them to get started in the cemetery business where people aren't used to seeing women in high up positions there? It was very fascinating to talk about their challenges, but also in what ways they're not concerned about it at all, that it's not something they worry about because it's just what they love and do well.
We're in a weird place culturally where there's ringing the bell genuinely and there's ringing the bell less than genuinely. And that's where it's tough to strike the balance. Like I think the way that you did the whole roundtable, like as you just described, it was perfect and organic. It was like I need a bunch of people. I found a bunch of people. Oh, these people are all women. I'll mention that as well. You know what I mean? It wasn't like let me go find some women to talk to so that I can say I did a woman thing. And that's I think that's why it came off so well, and I think that's why it was so genuine and everyone was so engaged because they were just the people you're going to talk to. And fortunately for a change, they weren't, a bunch of white guys in their 70s.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you want to keep it organic, whatever we're talking about. There's a lot of people with agendas to bring out in that we talk to from time to time, and we're happy to kind of help, but them do that occasionally. But we're really also about, what are people able to learn from this? That's way more interesting. And to me, that's the thrill of working for Kates-Boylston is it's an independent voice. We're not aligned with any organization or dealership or whatever, you know, we
Mm.
love them all, but what is it that they have to teach our readers, and how can we help them teach our readers? And, it's a lot more organic that way when we can get those stories like that, and also not be just following a trend, I see some other people are talking to women. Let's get women out there.
Right. Yeah, exactly. One of the things that we got to not quite collaborate on, but we both did several similar stories. Was on green burials, green, and of course, we want to talk about our friends over at the Green Burial Council who are having a great 2025 and looking for a great 2026.
You're talking about Darren Crouch.
Absolutely.
The cool thing about that is, you and I are immersed in death care media. Darren Crouch is a name we're going to see, if you're doing any of this stuff. And but it's cool if something makes it into the media out there, right? The so-called
Consumer media. I like to say
Consumer-
consumer media down my
consumer media.
nose.
Yeah, it'd be very self-negating of me to call it the real media, right? But, Time Magazine, for whatever it's worth these days, is still a big name. And I don't know how these things are compiled, but it's amazing that Darren Crouch, who, is both CEO of Passages International and president of the Green Burial Council, for those who hadn't heard, he's named to the 2025 Time 100 climate list, which recognizes global leaders who drive innovation and climate action in the business space. That's a big deal to see. I want to say one of ours, but somebody making that list who we know about in death care, and so other people can read about, because so much of what does make the news in the
It's
consumer news in the real world is negative. So it's nice to get a positive thing like that out
and
there.
more than that, I like to think that I didn't know that there was a climate list. But if I had seen a climate list with 0 green burial people on it, I would have been surprised, and maybe a little disappointed about, how hard they looked, time that is.
That's true, especially if you're talking about 100 people.
Yeah.
But, it also wasn't a small deal,
No, it's a huge deal.
Our colleague Patty Martin Barchi wrote a piece, and she did an interview with him right after, and he was headed down to Rio or something. He was down where they were having a big banquet and stuff, and it was a lot of big time folks, and it was a lot of big time names on that list, including like the Pope and other big real names that everybody knows. So that's just really cool.
So does that puts me 6 degrees from the Pope? That puts me 3 degrees from the Pope.
Because you've interviewed Darren Crouch at some point?
Yeah.
So yeah. Next up, interview the Pope and ask him.
Why not?
Ask him what he thought about what the priest said about cremation.
Yeah, I would hate to put him on the spot like that. And I don't speak Italian, and that would embarrass my family.
I think he's from Chicago, so you probably probably good.
Oh, I definitely don't speak Chicago.
Take him a deep dish pizza and have a good time.
Did you have any stories that stood out that you did this year on green burials?
Well, you talked about one we both did, so hopefully you'll help me remember the name of the place and or the woman. For the second year in a row, we had a green location in our runners-up for American Cemetery Excellence Award winner. And that's not something we do just to check a box. So it'd be cool to just have a green one,
Right.
And you interviewed also this year the woman who ran the cemetery from last year as well, and both of them, just touching back on something we talked about, are women. And anyway,
that didn't even occur to me.
Yeah, and one of them was in Maine, I want to say.
New Hampshire, I think.
Hampshire.
It was Mel Bennett, and she runs Life.
Mel Bennett, yes, exactly. I like what these people are doing, but also, the creativity behind it. It's not like, we just have a forest or a mountain, come figure it out. But they're trying to, just like old school cemeteries, figure out ways to get people interested and to come there and come back and be involved, and such as that.
Yeah, and the other woman that we spoke with was in what was the name of it? Green Springs Natural Cemetery Preserve.
Thank you. That's correct. Green Spring.
Yeah. Yes, and it was another one, and increasingly, I ran a story and in case you missed it, I think maybe in November or in late October, about municipalities that were partnering with the local land conservancies. So, every state, many counties even have like land trusts, and they're in charge of, getting easements, and doing preservation. And several of these government entities, whether they're counties, municipalities, states, are partnering with these to offer, conservation cemeteries, which is just mind blowing. If you think of how it was even 3 or 4 years ago, the idea that governments are saying, you know what, yeah, there's something to this, um, conservation cemeteries, are really a two birds with one stone, problem, or solution rather. So I was really excited to see that, and it'll be interesting to see more of that in 2026, because I think that might be a trend. I don't think that that's just a couple of outside spots, because a lot, the other thing that we've both, I think, reported on is, municipalities that are adding green burial as an option to their municipal cemeteries. And it's really just for space and because people are asking about it. And I think that those are two good reasons to do this.
Yes, Green Springs Natural Cemetery Preserve is in Newfield, New York,
There you go.
by the way. And the thing about it is, I could fully call it a trend, because what I see is more and more, when you look up news and town meetings, things happening, local cemetery, you'll see town board calling a meeting specifically to talk about adding a little section or to explore adding a bigger section. And so it's definitely out there. It's definitely big. The Forest Lawn won our American Cemetery Excellence Award this year. That's in Buffalo, but that's their main cemetery is Forest Lawn itself, but the Forest Lawn Group runs several other cemeteries. Mm-hmm. And one of them is sort of their designated for green people looking for green options, So they had opened their mind to it and say, even though we run this historic place, we can't do it in there, or they weren't set up for it, at least yet. But, they can guide people who are interested and say, we have these other cemeteries and this is a place that you can go and check out. So would that have happened 10 years ago? I doubt it.
All right. That is as good a place to stop as any. We will be back in another week, and Tom and I will continue to talk about the year that was 2025. And next episode, we'll have more funeral business related stuff, including a Texas Roundup and a look at some of the bigger players and what kind of years they had. And we'll take a look and see what we think is going to happen in 2026. But all that is for next week. For now, Funeral Service Insider Year in Review has been a Kates-Boylston production. It was written and edited by me. Actually, it was written and edited by Tom Nondorf and Tony Russo. Actually, it was written by Tom Nondorf and Tony Russo. It was edited by Tony Russo and produced by Kates-Boylston. You get the picture. You guys have a great week. We will catch you on the other side of Christmas, which is fun. So Merry Christmas, everybody. I hope you guys have a great holiday.